What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Burnout Brighter podcast. This is episode 78. My name is Matt, and I'll be your host for this evening's events. On this episode, I am incredibly excited to have one of the coolest voices in gaming, someone who is always incredibly professional, earnest, and just comes across in a way that makes you feel like you want to listen. We have on Mr. Jakejames Lugo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me. Hopefully everybody, they enjoy this convo, and just get to chill for a little bit as we talk, we hang, which is nice.
Yeah, just kind of get into it a little bit. Before we get into anything more, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where can people find your content? What kind of content do you make? Just give us the spiel.
Oh man, there's a lot. So basically, yeah, I'm Jakejames Lugo. You could call me JJ. Everybody else could call me JJ for short. I
Perfect.
tell this kind of like to everybody like all the time because I almost have to repeat it because of the gig meetings that I do every week. But it's like it's kind of funny and like goofy at this point. But I've been in the industry making content, about video games, for over 11 years as of January, over a decade.
Wow, man.
And
Congrats.
thank you. And I write about games. I do my YouTube content, which my YouTube channel is youtube.com/gamers with gains channel, where you could search Jake James Lugo in the search bar and you could see me wearing my glasses, trying to look cool and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Looking
make
fly, man.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I make content every single week. I make a highly edited, highly produced video review. Sometimes I post up gameplay previews of like let's plays of like brand new games that I've been sent from like publishers or that are coming out or games that I'm interested in. I do podcasts. I do event coverage. I do interviews sometimes, with the podcasts and stuff. And yeah, I also freelance sometimes for various different websites. I've had content published in places like IGN, Playboy, The Coalition, Switch Player Magazine. Very soon, which I could finally tell you now, like as it goes up because there's no embargo or anything. Red Bull Gaming is going to be another one that I get to add to my list.
No way. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
because I got to write up some stuff for them about a couple games, which is pretty dope, and a lot of other different stuff that I've done. Again, I've also done public speaking. Been a host at various conventions, various events, including one that literally just happened like 2 days ago at the time we recorded this, which was Uplink. But I've done it down here in the South Florida region and in other places because we have a lot of conventions down here in Florida. And I've spoken as a guest speaker. I've been a guest at some cons. I've spoken at Miami-Dade College for Make Games Miami, to talk to game developers or game design students that are trying to get into the industry and want to know more about the media or about influencers and stuff. I'd like to do things like that. And I just overall, in general, to sum it all up, I love the conversation about games. I love interacting with other people about them. I like meeting new people through them. And I just love having fun, being part of those convos and those discussions. So yeah, that's what I'm really all about. I'm on Twitter at Jake James Lugo. I'm on Instagram at Jake James Lugo. I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Jake James Lugo. And also on Twitch, twitch.tv/gamers with gains. And I just do a lot. I try to do a lot and I try to bring a lot of great stuff to everybody. And hopefully, doing stuff like this and other things, people could check me out, show some love.
For sure. And everybody, please go check him out. And something that I really like about your content is, and I don't know if there's like a better word for it, but I love how clean it is. It's so easy to understand.
I like
It's
that.
digestible. You know what I mean? Like the way that you speak, there's so much passion in it while also just so easy to understand while you break it down. So like, please go check out his content. He makes
A lot of people
fantastic
would say
stuff.
that like that's pro. Like a lot of people would say like, you put a lot of high quality energy into it, which is true. Like again,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
make a point to like make my stuff not only high production value as far as like, edits and rendering. Like recently, like I've had to make my stuff, I've had to do like a lot of like cut corners in order to try to, get around a lot of limitations. Like one of the biggest limitations everybody deals with is their tech, their computer.
Yeah.
I've
For
had to deal
sure.
with that for like years because I don't have a souped up rig. I would love a souped up rig. I would love a back computer. That'd be really
Right.
nice. But like I've had to come up with clever ways to get around my limitations and my barriers that are just out of my control, for the current moment. And luckily it's worked out pretty good.
Well, man, like that's what's so impressive about so much of what you do, right? You couldn't even tell that those things were there, and I'm sure you've gone through it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everybody does, but like the level of professionalism that comes with your content is just fantastic. So everybody,
Thank you.
please go check them out. We're going to have a fantastic conversation today, all about 2021. We're doing a hype check episode. We're going to talk about games that are coming, games that we're excited about, games that we think might come out this year, but we're not too sure
Yeah.
about. We'll find out all about them, but. We are going to start this podcast as we also always do with a round of random questions. And every time we have a new guest on, I like to hit them with a random question and then get them to hit me one back. It's never prepared for because that's just part of the fun.
Yeah,
So, Jakejames, JJ,
sure.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Mhm.
Um, and what I want to know as I, ramble on here to try and think of something that I think might be interesting. Okay,
That's the
so
hardest
here we
part.
go.
Coming up something random.
Exactly, right? While I try and talk long enough so it doesn't sound like too long. Okay, I got it. So you go by JJ, right?
Yeah.
An abbreviation of your name.
Mhm.
What is your favorite abbreviation in gaming? Give me like a character, or if you could make an abbreviation for a character that already exists,
Ooh, I got a good
what
one.
what's a good
I got a
one?
funny one. I got a
Yeah,
real
hit
funny
me.
one. Okay. So are you a fan of fighting games? Are you a fan of Street Fighter? Are you a fan of the
Uh,
FGC?
I've dabbled in some fighting games. I'm always like the guy that goes for the Marvel vs. Capcom or the
Okay.
Injustice on
Okay.
that side.
That's cool. That's cool. But the reason why I bring it up because there's a good acronym that's actually pretty funny that everybody in fighting games knows, and it's SPD. Okay, if you know what SPD stands for.
I don't. Tell me,
Okay,
please.
SPD stands for spinning pile driver. Okay, that's Zangief's 360 motion. So, like when he walks up to you, you walk up to him thinking that you're all good, and he grabs you, and you go for that twirl whirl. You are not all good. I can confirm this because I've been hit by that so many times, but also I've delivered it so many times, which is pretty funny. And I like to call it SPD, obviously spinning pile driver, or some people say 360 motion, but also I
Right.
like to call it hugs because I call
Hugs.
my Zangief, whenever I play Zangief in Super Turbo, which is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, whenever I play online against other people or against pros and stuff, I like to call it hugs because Zangief, all he wants to do is he wants to give you a hug. And when he hugs you, he takes away a third of your life and it's a wrap.
I I just think of that scene from Wreck It Ralph. 'Cause that was Zangief in there, right? Where
Exactly.
he's just
Hmm.
like,
Yep.
just the bad guy line. I'm blanking on it now, of course, but yeah, hugs, man. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I call him my Zangief, like, because I nickname like all the characters I play in Super Turbo just for the goof of it. I call them hugs.
So
I
is
call Ryu Capcom's finest. Okay.
oh
What is it?
nice.
I call Ken Masters the masterpiece Ken Masters. I call Chung Li the first lady of fighting games. Okay.
I
I,
like that a lot.
I call
That's a
Blanca
good name.
Blanca because we say it wrong sometimes, which is funny. Okay. And then
Right.
Zangief is hugs. I call Vega a la carte. I call I call Balrog Big Boy Balrog, and then I call
Big boy B.
was it Bison? I call him Big Buffalo Bison.
Ooh, I love the alliteration.
All
It
like these
just it
silly
just
names and stuff. I know I'm forgetting a couple, like here and there, because sometimes either I forget or I just haven't really like thought about it. But like, there's a lot there. I
yeah.
play the roster.
So is hugs the go-to in Turbo? Is that your
No,
man?
Hugs is not
No.
the go-to in Turbo. For me, I would say that if I had to choose like one or two or maybe three different characters that I play in Super Turbo, my go-to is always DJ because
Okay.
it's DJ and he's very versatile. He has got a lot of tools available to him, and it's just fun for me to play him as far as his playstyle as a charged character. Then after that,
Mhm.
maybe I would go over to someone like Chung Li, or I would go to Ryu. As like a second and third, just
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
fun of it and stuff, because the one thing I love about Super Turbo is that, the game is simple enough and easy enough to get into, even though it has a lot of depth to it, that you could kind of
Mhm.
like play the roster and have a lot of fun discovering like what type of player you are. And everybody has tools available to them that you could use and find great ways to exploit, as you're getting into matches competitively.
For sure. Man, so why fighting games specifically? Like what about them like draws you in? Because you have such obvious passion about them. What is it about fighting games that pulls you in so much?
Oh man, it's a combination of different things. Like a lot of people would say it's like the competition, the clash, and there is an element to that. I mean, human beings, we just love people just seeing them beat the crap out of each other
Yeah,
and us
yeah, yeah.
watching. That's a charm to it, which is funny. This is why people watch boxing, they watch the UFC, they watch fencing, all different types of stuff. It's the competition element to it. But I like the not only just the fun, like snappy nature of Street Fighter in general, especially classic Street Fighter. So that would include Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo or any iteration of Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter
Right.
Third Strike. You could even argue in there Street Fighter 4. A lot of people would say Street Fighter 5 too, but there's a whole bunch of other little problems and other things that get brought up with that game, especially modern fighting games, for one reason
Mhm.
or another. But with
Yeah.
the classic ones, especially Super Turbo, I always just find that you're quick to get in, you're quick to get out. There's a lot of depth with it if you want to get into that type of stuff, especially with competition and the scene and the culture around it. I actually wasn't really a fan of it at first, when I was younger, because I actually went to Evo in 2007 and I had a very
Oh, no
different
way.
experience than what I had now. At the time, I went for Smash Brothers. Okay, I went to go play
Okay.
Melee. And that's when I
Yep.
first got introduced to competitive Street Fighter. I got to meet Justin Wong. I got to meet a couple other people there that were playing games like Super Turbo competitively, and seeing it on stage being played at such a high level. That was like, yo, this is awesome. Like, this is really
Holy
cool.
crap. Yeah.
And and I was always so turned off a little bit back then anyway by a lot of the different stereotypes that you get about the fighting game community, about the fighting game scene, with it being a little bit hostile, with it being a little bit kind of like, rude in extent, different
A
things like
little
that.
aggressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very hyper aggressive, I should say,
Yeah.
and all the other things that come with it. But one of the cool things about it later on that I discovered is that it's very authentic and it's very interesting because I'm a big fan of kung fu movies, and I love,
Okay.
like, just like some of the old school Shaw Brothers films. And the fighting game community, I always say, it reminds me of that because everybody's got their little clans and their groups and their posses stuff. It's like a bunch of people just rolling up and just having kung fu fights in the street. Just playing against each other, like having their groups, their crew, their clan, etc.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
battling with each other. That's what it kind of reminds me of. So there's a charm to that. It's funny.
Of course. And I mean, that community especially sounds like it's a ton of fun to be involved in,
A lot
right?
of good
Especially
people.
once you kind of find your niche. Like, that sounds
Yeah,
like it's a really cool place to be.
yeah, definitely.
All right, man. Well, great. Well, okay, so now I'm going to get you to ask me a random question. And like I said, anything goes.
Anything
What's
goes.
something that you're going to ask? Anything
Okay,
goes.
here's a perfect one. What is the go-to snack when you're going to the movie theater? What's the big one? What's the one that that
Ooh.
when you're buying your ticket, when you're waiting in line, okay? It could be one or two
Mhm.
things. But like when you're waiting in line, it's like, okay, you know what? You see that concession stand over there? I'm gonna go get it after this.
S-
Like
So,
I would say the one thing here's the one thing to think about. I could always say like certain movies that you're gonna have fun with. Like if you're gonna go see a Star Wars movie, if you're gonna go see like
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
Marvel movie stuff, I call it big popcorn films. Like, is it big
Yes.
popcorn worthy? What's your snack that you're gonna get at the concession stand getting ready for the film?
See, I have a bit of a backstory when it comes to popcorn. Um, I'll never forget when I was younger. I was going with one of my best friends. I must have been like 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10 years
Hmm.
old at the time. And I was going with one of my best friends and his family. We were going to see Spider Man. We were going to
Hmm.
see Spider Man 2. And I'm a Spider Man is my guy. He is my favorite
Nice.
superhero. So I'll never forget. They trusted me with this big thing of popcorn, and I sat down, and immediately as I got into the seat, the whole thing tips out, and I just douse my entire
Oh
area in
man,
popcorn. And I sat there and I was like, this is it. This is where I die. This is the
so much for
moment.
that plan.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, maybe it's related, maybe it's not, but ever since, I've always been like, if I go for popcorn, I want like the smallest thing ever. I get sick after eating too much popcorn. So for me, what my go-to, what my combo always is I go for the nachos. And I
Okay.
know it's a little crunchy, it's a little loud, but it's just something about the nachos, and then cleaning up with some M&Ms after. That's my go-to.
I
That's my
like that.
1-2
I mean,
punch.
that's fair enough. I mean, you got a little trauma in there from the popcorn and stuff. I think you got to
That's
get
what I
over it
mean.
at some point because there's certain movies that just demand a big giant tub of popcorn. But I could go with the nachos, especially M&Ms too. M&Ms are nice. They're classic.
Yeah, I like the combination of going from the salty to the sweet, with a bit of that cheese drizzled on. I just think it's a great combination. And
Like, what
like,
are the good
so,
candies? I mean, because for you, like again, you mentioned M&Ms. M&Ms is classic. Sometimes I'll go either for Skittles. I'll go for the Mike and Ike's if they got them.
mhm.
Depending and
I'll go
stuff.
for I'll go for the Maltesers if I'm
The,
in the
the
mood.
crunch bars. Listen, like when you got something like especially because I remember this as a young kid going to the movie theaters. I love going to the movies as like an experience. I mean, obviously it's a
Mhm.
little harder to do so now, but like it's still a
Yeah,
thing for me where like if you just have like your popcorn or you have like your other snacks. Some people get hot dogs and meats and stuff. I don't usually go with that. I don't think it's the best thing.
yeah,
I think it's
yeah. I don't want to have like a full meal. You know what I mean? I want some
yeah.
good snacks.
Like I love good snacks, but like there's something about a big giant chocolate bar that's just very appealing. Like when
Yeah,
you're watching something, like I remember like going to films like the Star Wars prequels, like Phantom Menace or even Revenge of
yeah,
the
yeah.
Sith, or going to see a
Hmm.
Batman film. Like especially when I was young, my one of my first movies I saw in theaters was Batman Returns, and it was just like that's what made me fall in love with going to movies because the whole experience of it, getting all this stuff, and then hanging out and just chilling, like that's like to me really fun. So, but movies like that, I just love going and getting the whole shebang because I just think it's great. Everybody should experience that at one point.
I totally agree. And like, especially one of my favorite moments, especially at the movies, was watching Endgame.
Oh, dude,
And
I saw Endgame like 7 times. Like, I love the Marvel films. Like,
man, me too.
there's certain films that I just go multiple times. So Marvel films, especially Endgame, I took a whole bunch of people with me to go see that
Yeah,
like multiple times.
yeah. So I was living in Korea at the time, just as I am now, and we actually went to, it's like one of the biggest, it was the biggest, and now I think it's the second biggest movie theater in the world, like one
Mm,
of the biggest screens.
yeah.
So my lovely wife, was like sitting there by the computer as soon as tickets launched, and she locked like me and like 8 of my coworkers in for seats. So we went, and it's just like, man, the tears, the gasps, like it's such an experience when everything kind of lines up and you have a bunch of people who are so passionate about the same thing in one place together.
No, that is
Uh,
so true. Like, because going to
and
a film like Endgame or just a Marvel film or Star Wars or any
yeah,
culture related film, when you're going, especially open, if you got into the opening night, because when I went to see Endgame, I went to the opening night in my
yep,
local area, and it's just a different atmosphere. And like, and if you don't like going to films where there's a lot of noise stuff, it's not for you. But like for me,
no,
I love
no.
going and getting the reactions because it just makes it so much more fun.
I will never forget going to like the premiere of the first Avengers.
Oh yeah.
AMC did like a Marvel movie marathon leading up to it, where it was like they played everything from Iron Man 1 all the way through to a midnight premiere of Avengers. And like we were in that theater for, I don't know, probably like 16 hours or something. It was ridiculous, but like
Oh man.
it was such a cool ride because they were doing like little giveaways and stuff. You know, I managed to win myself like 3D glasses after each one of the Avengers. Like
Okay.
it was such a cool experience. But like the one thing, man, that stays with me until now is how bad the smell was by the time we rolled around to that midnight premiere of Avengers.
Oh,
Because
no,
I mean, it's
that's
just been like,
undefeated then. They gotta get on top of that then. Like, that
yeah,
was
like you
yeah.
had just like, you know, like this theater full of people who are just like stuck in there for over 12 hours. Like, oh, it was,
You know what they should have did then? Because I didn't go to the big marathon like that. I actually watched them at home, like, over a period of, like, a week or so leading up to
yeah,
Endgame.
yeah, yeah.
What they needed to do is, like, maybe air it out and, like, get people out to come off for a bit and then have them go back in, like, in between certain amount of movies. Because when you have that, then, I mean, obviously people hanging for a long time, like, not everybody's clean,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
So they gotta do that. That's like going to Comic-Con. Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con is the same way.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I've always wanted to go. I've never had an opportunity to, but like, man,
Worth
it doesn't take away from the experience, but like,
it.
it definitely, you know, gave my nose a little bit more to do, especially during that event, during Avengers. But it was an amazing, incredible experience.
Agreed.
But to continue on this hype train, JJ, whenever we have a new guest on, we like to do a segment called Game That Matters. And we like to talk
Mhm.
about mental health on the show. We like to talk about, you know, anxiety and things that we struggle with, or even just games that we think are important to us. So I wanted to ask you about a game that matters to you. It's a game that could be that have could have got you through a tough time, or a game that kind of stood out to you, or something that left some kind of impact on you. What is a game that matters to you?
Oh man, there's a couple because I probably play more games than the average person, like a lot more, a ridiculous amount. And
Right.
there's been a couple games that could fit that description, which I think that anybody that in the industry that plays a lot will probably tell you something similar, or if not the
Hmm.
exact same thing. The one that I think that everybody should experience when you want something that has to do when you want to, have like a moment or you want to have like a mental health check for yourself, play Journey. Journey is the game
Yes.
is that I feel is the one type of game that you could play that's short. It's less than an hour. You could finish Journey in like 20 minutes, like let's be honest. But like
Hmm.
if you take your time with it, it's very therapeutic and very cathartic for a lot of different things. I've played Journey a couple times, one of which I did for review when I was playing it, for my YouTube channel. But there's been
Hmm.
only a couple times I played through Journey in full whenever I had like a really tough time going on with certain stuff, as well as also, dealing with the stresses of everything, compounding on one another. And that is
For
one
sure.
where you could either have a cathartic cry, you could have like a moment just to get away from everyone, you could tone out or tune out the entire world around you. It really is that special of a game that is very unique because there's very few games that could do that. Like some people would also say Abzu is very similar to it, but I've played Abzu.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm actually going to be reviewing Abzu sometime soon on my channel, and it's just not the same type of experience that you would get when you're playing Journey. It's a very visceral reaction that you have when you play, and it is unique to everybody. Like it's very hard to describe unless you've like played through it and you've experienced it.
I think Journey does something really, really special in its just human connection as well. Like even going through it, like you'll come across other people kind of on their journey as well. And like I've come across certain situations where like you'll just have people start trying to guide you and start trying to help you. And like and it's kind of like one of those things where it's just like if you replay it and you can see somebody who's new playing it for the first time, you can kind of tell, right? And it's just
Mhm.
that basic connection of being like, someone helped me, let me help you. And I'll never forget, like one of my favorite things that that game does is at the end, right? Like when the credits are rolling, you see all the players' names that you encountered,
Yeah.
right? And like I had one of those moments playing that game where I was like, I thought this was maybe one or two people, but I met like 6 or 7 different people on this journey that stayed with me, that waited for me, that tried to show me where to go. And I think that's a beautiful answer because it can be a shutout, it can be your time with the game, but like that little bit of human connection can sneak in if you're looking for it. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that's really special that game does.
Definitely. It's highly recommended. And luckily for me, at one point when I went to E3, I got to meet the people who made Journey, which was nice. And I told them this was way before I did my review of it or my video on the channel. But I told them like, hey,
Hmm.
at one point I want to do a whole video about your game because I think your game is very special. Your game does something that not a lot of other studios are aiming to do.
Yeah, it's that game company, right? So I mean,
Is
it's
that
like,
game company? Yep. Hmm.
have you tried Sky?
Sky, no. The last couple games I played from that game company, obviously was Journey and Flower, because I had that game company or Journey collection at one
Yeah, yeah,
point.
yeah.
And I think, yeah, and I haven't gotten a chance to play Sky because again, so many games.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll completely understand. Yeah, it's one of those things that like I keep eyeing it because now it's on Android. I mean, I think
Mm,
it came over to Android the last few months, but like I keep looking at it, and it's just like I'm getting slight Journey vibes from it, but like I also I don't know. I have a tough time mobile gaming. Like it has to be something that like really grabs me and pulls me in for me to
yeah,
keep playing on my phone. And there's no reason for it. Like not to discount its quality. It's just I don't know. It's like a mental thing for me. Like I'll sit there and I'll just be like, yeah, my battery's dying. You know what I mean? Like I could be playing on anything else, but it looks like a really interesting game. Yeah. So I was just wondering if you had any experience with it because it looks beautiful.
I'll look it up and I'll definitely try to see if I can make some time to check it out. At least because again, that game company makes great stuff, high quality
It
games.
it does. They make super unique experiences. Nice. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for telling us about Journey and a game that matters to you. And
Hmm.
what I want to know next, I mean, we've talked about you guys, you play a lot of games. What is some of the stuff you've been playing right now? What have you been up to?
Oh man, I've Jesus Christ. Like I said, I play more games than the average person, more than probably your favorite YouTubers out there. Just that's not even me bragging. That's just a fact because
Yeah.
I not only do I try to play a game every single week, to review it, but also when I get other games sometimes randomly from publishers, from companies, that send it to me. And I've been privileged and honored to do something like that. So lately, one of the last videos I did recently was the Guilty Gear Strive beta, which is a big deal
Nice.
for a lot of fighting game fans that if they're into Guilty Gear. It's the latest entry of the Guilty Gear franchise. It's pretty darn cool. Now the beta, obviously, it's a beta. It's rocky. It has some
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
but it was still I'm very pleased with the direction it was going to, with the way that the visuals are, the music, the presentation of it
That
all is good. It feels pretty darn good to play to as well. A lot of good characters, especially in the beta. And I don't know if that was the entire roster. There might be a few more, but there's still other features that obviously I haven't been able to explore because it's a beta, like the story
right.
mode,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
arcade mode, some of the other was it offline stuff. It was pretty
That
awesome.
game just it looks just so beautiful. The animation is just I keep seeing that, all over the Twitter
You know
timeline and it's like,
something? It's funny you
man.
mention that because the first time I saw Guilty Gear Zerd when it was being revealed, I saw it at E3 and I got to play it for the first time at E3. And I remember
Uh-huh.
everybody swearing up and down, this has to be like, it looks so smooth. Like, there's no way that this could be just flat out just 2D animation. And then when you find out later that it was a combination of like 3D models, but like given a 2D anime and approach with just the way that things move and stuff,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why it
yeah.
feels so good. Like, if it's an actual, like, full on anime. And it's like, okay, that is pretty awesome. Like you don't see any other company doing that, which is funny. I think it's really Arc System Works with Dragon Ball Fighters and
Yeah,
Guilty
fighters
Gear,
being
that
yeah.
really Fighters being the first one, or no, Zerd being the first one, and then Fighters being the second really big, popular, mainstream one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is doing something like that, especially for the fighting game scene.
Yeah, it just looks incredible. Like even people were talking about like pointing out their like the hair physics and how like just incredible everything looks. So it
Yeah.
feels good to play too because
Yeah.
I have never tried any of the Guilty Gears, but
It's
it
pretty
just
good. Like again, if you're into fighting games, like it does feel very good. There's a lot of things at play with the matches and stuff. It's just overall a well put together game. And again, for a beta, it's a good first impression. This is the second beta technically that I've played with it because there was a beta a long time ago, and then that just never happened afterwards. It didn't come out for like a long time. So it's gonna when it comes out, I think people are gonna be pleased. I think people are gonna enjoy it and stuff. I think the other game stuff that I have been playing, I've been playing Breath of Fire on SNES
yep.
because I
Hmm.
got it for Switch Online. That's going to be another game that I'm going to review, and I got pressured a little bit into that slash convinced into it because there's apparently a very big Breath of Fire community that loves their games and are very hardcore for it. So I'm diving into the series really for the first time in full, because I'm going to play through Breath of Fire 1 and 2, and it's just taking me a while to do it, but I'm experiencing that.
How are
I've
you
also
enjoying it? It's one of those RPGs that I've just always heard talked about, but have never actually taken the dive
Here's the
into.
problem with classic JRPGs specifically. The thing is
Yeah,
that some of them don't age that well. And Breath of
exactly.
Fire
Yeah.
1 specifically, like Breath of Fire 1, it's a good concept. I like how streamlined certain elements of this game is. It's like a little peek into my review, right? So, like, basically,
Mhm.
I love how certain elements of it are streamlined. I don't like the menus. I think the menus are horrible, like absolute trash.
Right.
The reason being is because they like to do this abbreviation thing with the titles and the information about like all your
Oh no.
equipment, and it's just really bad. Like when you're, let me put it this way, like compared to a game like Final Fantasy, any classic Final Fantasy game, okay, that's 8-bit or 16-bit. When you see stuff, you
Mhm.
want to see your information because this is a JRPG. You need to know what
Yeah.
certain items do. You need to know the titles or the names of the items as you're in battle and combat. You need to know what's up. At the same time,
Yeah, yeah.
you don't need to go through a process just to find out information of certain things. Like in Breath of Fire, one of the things that I hate is that in order to check out the info or what something does or like certain elements about it, you have to go into a menu, click another option called I think it's called like a question mark or a check, which is just a symbol, by the way, and then go to the
Mhm.
item that you want. And then it'll tell you, once you click on it, it'll tell you all the information, as opposed to a Final Fantasy game. When you look at something, it'll tell you exactly, what it
Yeah,
does
yeah, yeah.
right before you even click on anything. It's just, there's a few extra steps that I feel like are just unneeded. Now, in its defense, I think the remake later on, I think it was on was it Game Boy Advance or something, like the re-release of it was a little bit better, and then future
Mhm.
Breath of Fire games, subsequent sequels were a little bit better where they didn't do something like that. I think it's really the first two games that are like that people have told me, but it's just one of those things that's like, come on, man. Like even back then when this game came out, I think we had Final Fantasy 2 on SNES and Final Fantasy 3 at some point, something like that. Again, I don't remember the timing, but like there was other JRPGs that just did this better.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like it's, especially with the JRPG that'll last you for, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours, right? Like I mean, those extra steps add up a
This was
lot
about like
as
30,
things go.
40 from what I saw.
30, 40.
Yeah.
Not as bad, but still like that'll add up pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Nice.
and the thing is, too, like, I love going to some of those classic games. Again, I've reviewed a lot of older games and retro games that I've actually, again, really grew up with. I didn't really grow up with Breath of Fire because I was a Genesis kid back in the day, but like, I've gone back and reviewed games that are like Beyond Oasis or Vector Man or, the Disney Gargoyles game or Splatterhouse. I know that's one that I did for Halloween, or other games that, like, again, the Sonic games. I did Sonic 1 and 2 so far, and eventually I'm going to do Sonic 3, when I get things together with it. It's just that I
Mhm.
feel like some games have a lot of elements that make them age well, and those are the ones that end up becoming timeless and iconic for various different reasons. And then some games are still good and still great in certain elements, but there are certain parts of them that just have not changed well with the times, that are things that are just done better, even within their same time period. And it's just, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, yeah. They're much more, especially now playing them, right? After you've
Yeah,
seen so much better,
through a
even
modern
outside of,
lens. Hmm.
exactly. Yeah. It kind of stands out a little more. Well, I'm glad that you're still enjoying it, right? Because it sounds like even despite its flaws, it is something that's,
Yeah, I'm still
worth
digging it.
playing,
I'm,
right?
I'm still glad I'm able to play it, and I feel like, again, just getting some of the feedback and thoughts from the Breath of Fire community, I think has been really enlightening, and it's been a nice guide for it. As I go
Yeah,
along
yeah.
with it, and eventually, once I finish, because I like to finish games before I review them, at least for the YouTube channel. It used to be, and I
Mhm.
still kind of believe that you don't need to finish a game in order to review it, especially if you spend a lot of time with it. But I've been getting into the habit of actually making sure that I try to at least get to the point where I complete a game's main story before I review it. I just think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
proper. Again, it's not a necessity, it's not like a requirement, but some people look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, especially if you have time for it, right? I think if you're trying to hit
Exactly.
embargoes, like things can be a little more spotty, especially if you're given a game, a week before and it's like an 80-hour game. But like if you're taking your time with it, I mean, you have much more room to kind of,
And it's
do it
funny you say
properly.
that too, because like I come from the experience, I come from having the perspective of like, okay, I've gotten games before where that I've gotten just before they're released or just before their embargo lifts, because as
Mhm.
I'm getting stuff from publishers, and sometimes you just are not given enough time to meet like a deadline. And
Mhm.
as long as you're playing, like if you play like at least 20 hours of a game, or at least you've played up to like a good chunk of hours, I feel like you could have an opinion on it. Like everybody has
Yeah.
this thing where it's like, oh, either if you don't complete a game, you're not doing a due diligence, you don't have a valid opinion. And like sometimes I think that just gets too superficial, and people get too caught up and easily like, seduced by this notion of like, oh, okay, trying to point out the flaws of everybody's opinions that don't agree with you. And I think that's
Yeah.
stupid. Not completing a game sometimes is usually the go-to on top of other things. But as someone that has had to write game reviews, has had to make videos about them, part of an outlet, part of a website at some point, and try to meet deadlines, it's a very different perspective than someone that just picking up the game and just playing for their leisure.
Yeah, and I think that like the timing of embargoes is also so important in this
Oh, they're
industry,
the
right?
worst
Because I mean,
sometimes.
like it's so
You want to hear a
there's
bad
so
one?
much game to.
You want to hear a real bad one that happened to me with
Yeah,
embargo? So everybody remembers Shenmue 3, right? Okay,
yeah.
because let me tell you something about Shenmue. Shenmue
Off
3
to
is
a
a
good
bad
start.
game. Shenmue 3 is a bad game. It's not, it's a broken game. Like, and as much as like people love Shenmue and love classic Sega and love Yu Suzuki and all this stuff, the game is bad. And let me tell you, I got the game from the publisher, okay, or the PR really, that they sent it to. They were really shady about this. They sent some of the people this game like literally the day before, the night before, and then expected people to kind of like, try to
Turn
review
around
it
a review.
by
Yeah.
this embargo day. And I was like, what the heck? Like, they even did that recently with Cyberpunk some 2077. A lot of people had a problem with
Yep.
that, by not getting certain copies of the games and stuff. It's like when you see things like that, like it's like a red flag, obviously. But like when you're still getting the game, you still have to meet a certain deadline, or at least try to get due diligence to get your content out as everybody else.
Exactly.
Certain people get it mad earlier, before anybody else, and you just got to
Yep.
do it.
And that's the thing too, is that like especially for smaller channels, like I know for us, right? Like we always try and hit embargo, and like I'll
Yeah,
grind out games like crazy to try and hit
you
that
have to.
because like those early views are so important, right? Like they're so important.
And it's not like you're
So
trying
like
to rush. It's not like you're trying to rush
yeah,
through it, but like you're kind of made to kind of like hustle because, the thing is a lot of people don't really seem to understand unless you're dealing with it is that when content goes out on, especially on YouTube, or like when certain things get put out there via SEO like that, like if you're not within that first group of people, like some people are just not checking for your stuff. And that's just like too bad. Like there's nothing you could do about it. It's kind
yeah,
of
and like people are hungry for it when people are hungry, right? Like they're going to be
exactly.
looking for stuff to try and validate their pre-orders. They're going to be looking for stuff to try and get in to be like to justify
Or
their
be part of that
purchase.
conversation. Be part of that immediate
Ex-
conversation on social media. Like, perfect example, like a lot of people weren't really checking for reviews for The Last of Us Part 2, even though that was a hot game that was being talked about after that first week, because everybody had their opinions way before going into the game. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of different factors to it.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like it can be tough, but like man, like sometimes you just got to do it. And I completely agree with you. Like I think one of my favorite reviews from some someone who didn't finish the game was Skill Up's review on Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah.
Like he was brutal. He was brutal, but like I mean like I don't think you need to finish the game to understand
What's
whether
up?
you like a game or not. Yeah, like you just you'll formulate that opinion, and it's like if people are coming out to check out your content, they should be able to trust you whether you finish the
The
game or
way you
not. You
talk
know what I
about
mean?
it is should really convey like how you feel about a game. Like that's why I say like in my reviews I don't score them on my YouTube channel. Some people do,
Yeah.
and a lot of creators do so because it's part of like I guess the charm, and people like just getting your videos out
People
there.
like to see the numbers, right? They like to
Yeah,
see the
they're
numbers at
only
the
looking for
end.
the numbers and looking for that final opinion. But like I think that the way you talk about a game and the way that you describe your stance or your perspective on it should already telegraph a little bit of where you're going with it.
Yeah, we're the same way. We don't like to score our reviews either just because there's so much more
They have a
nuance to a
purpose.
game versus just good or bad, right? Like
Mhm.
there's the good parts, bad parts, there can be great parts or not. Like it's
Yeah,
just there's too much gray area in there. But let's get this train moving. So, oh right, as for myself, I have been playing Persona 5 Strikers. I'm obsessed.
nice.
Um I got that digital deluxe, so I got the game I got access to it a few days early, and it's so much fun. Uh
Looks like
I I am not a big Musou person whatsoever, but the biggest thing that I can say about this game is how much it just feels like Persona.
that's good.
And as a huge diehard Persona fan, that was my biggest worry going into it. But like I think in the first like 2 hours, I probably did maybe 20 to 30 minutes of combat. The rest of it was all cutscenes, which I know to some people probably isn't what they want to hear, but for Persona, that's exactly where it should be, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like I want the world building. I want to see what's going on with these characters, and just being back with this cast in this place is just it's so special. The writing is great, and I'm really really enjoying it. Some of the only issue that I have with it so far is I can't tell at this point, just because I'm probably only about 4 hours in, if it's a me problem or if it's a combat problem, because I find myself just by virtue of it being a Musou, getting very overwhelmed at points, which I think is a little bit by design, but also the camera just isn't where it needs to be all the time for
That's
that
always a
amount of
Muso problem
enemies.
with the camera all the time with
Yeah,
every Muso game. Even Hyrule Warriors, it's the same thing. That's always
yeah,
an issue.
yeah. So like I find myself getting hit, and like sometimes when you get hit once and you just start getting mobbed, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's just like it takes it'll take you a second to get back up, and it'll take you a second to be able to dodge out. Um, and like some of these bosses, like they hit hard and they hit hard, they hit fast. But I'm really really enjoying it despite of that, and I kind of feel myself getting more, uh, you know, tuned in with the combat.
Mhm.
I'm just curious to see how much of it as I continue on. Um, how much of the combat will be either something that I'll get used to or something that is going to continue to bug me because everything around the combat is fantastic, and I'm really curious to see more.
I feel
And
like if you stick with it like that, kind of, especially if you play like Hyrule Warriors or something like that, you'll be totally fine. It's just like those are common problems within Musou games, and it's one of those things where because now with all the visual like eye candy from Persona, like that they're
yep,
getting into the formula. I think that it still is a cool presentation thing going on for it. And like little issues like that aren't going to take it from like the full experience. But I feel like if you just give it a little bit more time, you're going to love it. You're going to have a ball.
yeah, I'm super excited to continue. And the other thing that I finally finished is Judgment. That game has been like
That game takes itself too seriously. Like, and I love Yakuza like that. I love those
yeah.
series. That's the one that takes itself a little bit too seriously. It needs to be a little bit more wacky.
Man, like I wish that's one thing that I missed about in Judgment. Like I think the main story is probably one of Yakuza's best, like
Mm,
from that studio, and like it being a Yakuza add-on, but I felt the side quests to be a little bit lacking in that wacky department, like
mhm.
especially coming off of Yakuza 7. um who like a lot of those side quests are they just threw shit at the wall and saw what stuck, and like a lot of the times it worked really really well.
Yeah.
Judgment just it was missing a little bit of that charm, but outside of that I think the main story is fantastic. I loved the entire ride. I thought it did slump a little bit in the middle, but I think it kind of picked itself up back up pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Like, man, what a game. I love that studio, and I love those games.
They
And
make good
now
stuff.
yeah, the next thing on my roster ready to go is Kwami 2. I still haven't gotten around to playing
Oh, you
it.
have to play it. I
Uh,
I did a review for Kwami too, and it's cool. Like I love the
yeah,
remakes that they did for the first three Yakuza games, and I think they're gonna. Yeah, pretty sure they're doing it for Kwami 3 as well
I
for the
really
third game.
I really really hope so, because they have the 3, 4, or 5 like quote unquote remasters out.
Yeah.
I would love to see them kind of rebuilt from the ground up.
Mhm.
But I'm excited because from everything that I hear, Kwami 2 is one of the highlights of the series. So I'm excited to get
Definitely.
into that.
Tiger
But
punching. That's the best
tiger
thing about it.
punching,
Tiger
man,
punching.
it's just so satisfying. It's so satisfying. But that is an old game. And not to hate on old games, but what we're here to talk about today is new stuff. We're going to be talking all about the different games that are going to be coming out this year, what we're excited for, what we think might still come out, and what kind of, where we're at. So, JJ, why don't we start with March? We're coming up on March, and just taking a look at a list here. We have stuff like Yakuza coming out for
Mhm.
the PS5. We have
Yeah.
Apex finally coming to the Switch. We have Avengers finally coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X and XS, but there's not too much new stuff here. The one that kind of jumps out to me is Balan Wonderworld. Have you played the demo,
I
or have you
got
had
the
any time to?
here's the funny thing, I downloaded the demo, and I heard everybody say that the game and the demo just is not a good impression, and I never got a chance to really sit down and play it, because obviously it's made us by the same people who did Nights into Dreams and like,
Yep.
some of the people from the Sonic team, and that's cool and stuff, but I even just looking at it, like, looking at, like, the main, just trailer that came out for that thing, it's just it did not give a good impression. It just did not
I
give a good impression, in all honesty. Like, it's
I'm com-
like it was rarely it's just awkward. It just comes as a very awkward. And again, I need to sit down and play it to get a full like scope of it.
yeah, I'm with you there. I the trailer left a horrible taste in my mouth. It just didn't look completely put together, and maybe that was just a bad trailer, and I haven't touched the demo either. I've downloaded it, but I just haven't started playing it. But
Yeah,
I don't see a lot of hype around that game. I don't see a lot of people talking about it. I feel like it's very for a very specific community of people, and I'm sure they'll love it.
I agree.
But for me, the hype in that game is like
I don't
I
even
don't
think
think it could be any lower.
I don't even think there's hype. I think people are just down about it. Like I think they were expecting something, unique because of the people that made Nights into Dreams, but like just what we see and what we got and like all that stuff is not living up to it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then in terms of other stuff coming with March, I think the big one is going to be Monster
Monster Hunter.
Hunter Rise.
Yes, exactly.
Are you a big Monster Hunter
Oh
guy?
yeah, of course. Like I did a lot of stuff, on various websites for Monster Hunter or about Monster Hunter, I should say. And again, like I love going to events like E3 and seeing like the booths there for Monster Hunter from Capcom. Like that's a series that you have to really respect because it had a very bad impression here in the United States for a long time. And
Yes.
it wasn't
Yes.
until that they got the release on both the Nintendo Switch as well as also the 3DS and also eventually when it came to PlayStation 4 with Monster Hunter Worlds. And it's just
Yeah.
that it really turned its whole perception around, and everybody jumped in on it afterwards, because it for a long time the series what it is now, a lot of that DNA was in some of the older games like on PlayStation 2 and all that stuff, and it was just meandering here, but it was huge in Japan. So
It
here,
was
like, I'm so glad to see it like get that, get the love that it deserves.
I agree. And especially because like even hearing stories from Japan, about people crowded around tables at, McDonald's and stuff, and all they do is playing Monster Hunter for,
That's
hours
real.
on end.
That's real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I was always a series that I was so curious about. So I finally jumped in on World, like I'm sure many other people did. Because I kind of fell off of Nintendo with their handhelds after the DS. I just
Mhm.
never really had the money to pick up a 3DS. So like that series wasn't something I really got into until World. So I'm really excited about Rise, and I'm very, very curious. Because from some of the diehards that I know said that this feels like kind of a step between World and the kind of more classic style of Monster Hunter that kind of came before. So I'm really curious to kind of experience something that's a little bit of both worlds kind of coming together, because it does seem like there is a bit of a divide between the two.
Yeah.
Um, and like, the Switch, man, there's it's selling like crazy still.
Oh,
So like
good.
yeah. So like I really wonder what kind of numbers this game is going to do, especially at a time when, Animal Crossing came out around this time last year, and I mean the pandemic helped, I'm sure, rocket that into stardom, right? So I wonder if Monster Hunter being on Switch now, and with the pandemic still being a problem, I wonder if it's going to get similar love, because there really isn't a lot coming out around it. Um, do you foresee this game being as big as World, or do you think it's going to be bigger?
Oh, I think it'd be as big. I don't know if it's going to be bigger because, again, I don't know about as far as the numbers of how many Switches are out there, compared to like PlayStation 4s and Xbox Series X or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think that it's still going to be popular. I still think that people are going to talk about it, and a lot of people are going to get into it even more, especially being on the Switch, because one thing I will notice about the Switch is that a lot of people that didn't get into certain series have been playing them because they're portable, that the people have been able to play certain games on trips and just get together with other family members or friends in other locations outside of their home. Because remember that a game like that was always limited to like the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 2 and stuff, a home
Yeah.
console, but now it could be on the go. And you can even argue that 3DS kind of did something similar too, as well. But with this one, I feel like now that, people are playing a game like this or games like this where you could have both the portability and the home experience like that, I think it's going to do wonders for them. I think it's going to be really good.
I agree. My hype is through the roof on this one. I'm very, very excited about it. The demo also I felt very good
Demo was
about. I
dope. I
found
had
the
the demo. I got to play with my hammer. I was ready. Like, I was having fun.
yeah, I had a great time with it, and I think part of that was also just coming off of Monster Hunter World and having at least a bit of experience, because I remember playing the Monster Hunter World demo and being like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
Like immediately overwhelmed. And I feel like the demo for Rise, took a bit more time to help you understand, kind of what was going on. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to do numbers, because I think a lot of people bought in on the Switch too that probably either were lapsed gamers who maybe had not played in the last 5 or 6 years, or a lot of new gamers. I know even my wife, who has gotten more and more into gaming, as our relationship has gone on. But she picked up a Switch around the time that Animal Crossing came out, and even I remember her kind of watching Monster Hunter World and being like, "This kind of looks fun." So I'm curious to see whether she'll jump in with me. But
Nice.
I think Rise is going to be something special.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for March. We have all the Kingdom Hearts games finally coming to PC.
Well, by the way, for the record of those, way overpriced. Should not be that
Completely.
price. Like,
I don't like that's like Nintendo levels of pricing to
that's
release all those.
obnoxious, because you would get all
Yeah,
those games, all those collections. You get them on PSN or any of the other platforms for like vastly cheaper, except for Switch, obviously. Which that's another problem. I feel like that those games need to be on Switch at some point.
yeah.
But
And
like,
like the thing is,
so expensive.
like the all-in-one collection was like $30 or $40 on sale not just too long ago on PSN.
And
Like,
less, you could get it for less than 20 at one point.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is
Like,
crazy.
how can you possibly justify full price for all of those? Like, especially because it's just a port. Like, they're not doing anything else to it.
People like this was like $59.99 that they're charging, like on PC nonetheless. Like, listen, I love PC gaming, but let's be real for a second. Like, you should not be charging
Yeah,
full price for PC games like that, because it's just people are not buying games like that on PC. They're going to Steam. They're paying a
yeah,
lot less on Steam. PC gamers are going to look at that, and unless you're a big Kingdom Hearts fan, they're going to look at that and be like, "Yeah, right." Like, no.
yeah. And it's funny because I've even seen some people on Twitter being like, "All right, time to buy Kingdom Hearts again." I'm like, "Man, good on you people."
Yeah,
Like
good. There goes
that,
$60
yeah,
a pop for every single
yeah,
one. Like that's one of those things. Even the fans got to take a step back and be like, nah, like
yeah. Like this is not okay. That's egregious. Like completely way too
you know
much.
what I think that is too? I think that has to be a licensing thing because I think it's probably a lot of red tape to get those games outside of their initial platforms, or just thinking that trying to capitalize on Kingdom Hearts fandom. Just trying to people just trying to charge whatever they can because they think that the people are going to pay whatever like that. It's just so obnoxious.
I agree, and like especially because the memes and everything else that's built around the community of this game, and like Kingdom Hearts is kind of one of the quick go to quick jokes, especially within the gaming community about its story and how everything how Kingdom Hearts
Oh yeah.
fans are. So
As
I feel
someone
like
who's
some people
written
might,
about it over years, I could confirm this is all true and this is all
yeah,
wacky,
right.
crazy. I've even met some of the people that have been involved with Kingdom Hearts in the past like that, and I don't even think some of them even know what's going on. I feel like no, was it Tetsuya Nomura is like winging it as he goes.
Yeah, let's see. Let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks here, and this is what the next game is going to be about.
Exactly right.
And that'll take us over to April, and I kind of the first big April launch that we have is Outriders, which is supposed to be coming April 1st.
Hmm.
I keep hearing about this game, JJ, and I don't know what it is. I just like I keep hearing this name mentioned over and over again, and like I know it's a shooter, and that's about all I know about it. Is this something that you've been paying attention to?
I mean, I've seen it, but it's not something I really care to pay attention to because, like, there's certain games that are just like, even on first impressions, like they look cool, but it's not for me. It doesn't look like it's for me. I think Outriders is this game that's trying to do the same thing as like Anthem, or is the one that everybody looked at it. I'm trying to let me look at the publisher. Yeah, it's Square. It's the Square Enix like shooter game that like you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the type of style of games that like unless you know about Deus Ex and stuff like that, you're not really going to be into this. Because most people think Square Enix, they think obviously JRPG and they think other types of like style of games. But with this one, I've seen it a few times. I've seen the trailers. It's like, you know what? I'm not digging it. This one's not for me.
yeah. It's kind of got that kind of Overwatch style to it, right? It's meant to be like
Yeah.
a
The hero shooter, the hero like competitive
exactly.
shooter, a little bit with the little RPG elements to it. Like it's cool. It's still a fad, but this is clearly not for everybody. People who want that style of game are going to go continue to play Overwatch or Overwatch 2 eventually, or play
Yep.
Destiny. It's just other games that, in my opinion, right now, and besides it not being on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, like it's just you could get it elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm curious to see what's going to come from this game, but my expectations are not too high for it to kind of continue on.
Hmm.
And then continuing on through April, a game I'm very excited about: The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel 4 is coming to Switch and
Good
PC on
series.
April 9th. I'm so stoked to continue on with that series, and now I have to finish 3 before then.
I
I've
haven't
been
played
playing it on my
three yet. I've
Switch.
only played one and two so far.
Yeah, loved 1 and 2. I picked up 3 on Switch, and I've been playing through it, and it's a blast. It's so good, and like the sense of progression and time in that game, it still continues to be excellent. It's just one of those things where it's just like I'm playing it just for myself, so I've been kind of going away at it slowly, and like I've been jumping back and forth to it as other games have come up.
Yeah,
But with 4 coming, I'm excited. Uh, Next after that, we have Near Replicant
yeah,
version
that's a big one.
1.2247448713. My God, Square Enix, you and your naming.
Yeah, right.
Like, just
And the
give
near,
it.
it's what is it? Is it Daddy Near or Kitty Near or whatever? Like that, everybody's like the meme. Like it's the Near remaster, like re-release
Yeah,
thing.
seriously. Are you big on Near? I've actually never played
I
on
got, I
Near.
got a funny thing for you. I helped write the guide for Near Automata on IGN on the
Oh no way.
I did. I did the video stuff for it, or a bunch of video stuff for it, and helped do some pages. And I love Near Automata. Near Automata, I think, is a great game. That was a game that year that I felt like got snubbed at the VGAs or the Game Awards.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I don't know. The thing I keep hearing about it is you have to play it 3 or 4 times to get to the actual
No,
ending,
no,
and
no,
that's
no,
kind
that's
of
not
what's been.
entirely true. Like you have to play it through a couple things, like a certain amount of times to get like multiple endings, like that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff that you can do, and there's certain things like you don't have to complete the full game to get certain endings. Like some of them are silly, some of them are like goofy. They're not like full
Mhm.
like conclusions, but like you do have to play through. I think it's like once or twice to get like certain things to unlock multiple endings.
So, do you think that this new one is going to live up? Well, because it is a remake or remaster, right, of the original one. Do you think this is kind of going to live up to the hype that probably Automata has set?
I think it's going to continue it. I think that people that are into this are already into Nier Automata. They just love the series. There, some people played the original Nier or any of the other games that were done by what is it? what's his name, Yokotaro. Just
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
bunch of stuff. Like people are into that, and I think this game is going to do good. I mean, it's coming out on multiple platforms of PS4, Xbox One, and Windows. I wish could make it also to the other platforms as well, PS5 and Xbox Series X. I don't know about Switch though. I don't know how intensive that game is by default. Like, you could say that about any game now
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
out
yeah.
at this point, but like with Replicant, I feel like it's going to do good. I think people are excited about it, myself included.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how it's gonna do, and like maybe I'll actually finally get around to playing Automata properly. The next one coming out in April, and one that I'm incredibly excited about, but also very nervous about, is new Pokemon Snap coming
Yep.
to the Switch on April 30th.
Mm-hmm.
I like jumped for joy, screamed happy stuff when that trailer came out, that first one, and I have a lot of fond memories of Pokemon Snap on the N64.
Yes.
I am like holding my breath until I can get my hands on it, just because I feel like Pokemon has disappointed me more so than not in the last few
Really.
years. Um, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of Sword and Shield.
Okay,
I
that's
just
fair.
feel like those games have just gotten too handholdy. I think Sword and Shield did some things right. I think the kind of wild areas and the kind of stuff that they're doing was definitely a step in the right direction. But I think I just miss a bit of kind of the challenge and sense of wonder that kind of came with those games earlier on. Um, but with Pokemon Snap being something a little bit different, I'm hoping that it's going to kind of capture some of that magic that Pokemon Snap brought. Almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Are you excited about this one?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, again, most of us like Pokemon. I think most people out there like Pokemon, even though they might
Yep.
not be die hard into it. But I think this one was a cool surprise. People have wanted this style of game for a while. I remember people even
Yes.
talking about this years ago, saying like, "Hey, it would be awesome, with the Switch if we have a new type of like Pokemon Snap game because it almost feels almost ideal." Or even on mobile, a lot of people talked about having a Pokemon Snap game on mobile similar to Pokemon Go, which would have also
Yep.
made sense in some way. But I think this is cool. Again, it's getting a little traditional with it. Basing looks like it's basing a lot of stuff off the N64 game or like what that established, and it's going to have other generations with it, which is cool. As long as they
Yeah.
got Squirtle and there's a Squirtle Squad net reference or a joke in there, I'm good. Then I got no
Yeah.
complaints.
As long as I just want to see one Squirtle with some glasses, and we'll be good.
That's it,
And
and
then
I'm
the
good.
game's a
And I'm
hit.
straight. I'm sharing on social media and the whole nine. Like it's as long as I get that, I'm a happy man.
Yeah, I think this game has the potential to do numbers if it's good, especially because I think a lot of people who know Pokemon but don't play Pokemon, this is kind of the kind of game that's an easy buy. You know what I mean? Like, just take pictures of them. You know what I mean? Like, go on this little roller coaster ride and just take pictures. I think
Very
a
casual,
lot
very
of people. Yeah, I think a lot of people could buy in on this. Uh, the next thing that we have coming on that same day is Returnal coming from PS5, which was just recently delayed out from March.
chill.
What are your feelings about this one?
Nothing. I honestly, I really don't have any opinion about. There's certain games that like I've seen stuff for it, and I've like know that they're coming out. And it's just I really don't have an opinion. Like this is one of those games. It's just like I'm not into it, because I need to like look at a little bit more stuff to see if like where I really stand. But also, just again, like so many games, not enough time.
Yeah, the thing about this one is that like when that delay came and I kind of started looking it up again, there was like a number of like gameplay trailers and stuff that came out a couple days before that I saw no one talking about. And I
I
was
think
like,
it's like a lot of people. I think a lot of people feel very similar to me because again, look at how many games already at this point. We're just in April, March at this point.
yep,
Like, and how
yep.
many games like some almost got to pay attention. Some of which we didn't even mention. I mean, we mentioned before because Guilty Gear Strive is one of them. I think that's in that same month. But like, it's just there's so many other games and there's a lot to pay attention. And then that's not even counting the rest of the year. Like, there's other
Yeah.
stuff that probably hasn't even been announced yet that we probably might not hear about till like the summer. Because remember, E3
And
is going
that's
to go digital this year, so that's it's going to be more stuff on top of that.
yeah, and I'm really curious to see kind of how the year continues on past then as well, because I think Corona is still a very, very real issue for a lot
Yeah,
of
that's going to be another year
developers.
or two. Like, get comfortable
Yeah,
for a while.
yeah, like I think it's going to kind of be a bit of like a slow trickle because like after that we get into May
Yeah,
and the kind of
Mass
the big stuff that we have in
Mass Effect.
yes, Mass
That's a
Effect.
big
Mass
one
Effect
for a
is a
lot of
huge one.
people.
I'm so excited to play this for the first time. That's like one of my biggest like
I want to
gaming.
play through those games again. That trilogy. I think that's a trilogy. Like, they're not including Andromeda for obvious reasons, but like Mass
Yep.
Effect 2 and 3 are phenomenal freaking games that people need to play.
Yeah, and I mean like between that and Resident Evil Village coming out that month,
Yep. Hmm.
we're also getting Deathloop, which I'm very very excited about. I think that game looks super interesting and super super cool.
Hmm.
And one of the other ones that kind of disappeared from the spotlight for a while, but I'm kind of baiting my breath to see how it's going to turn out is Biomutant.
Yeah, that's another. I heard someone like mention that briefly, like not even within the last week or two, and I'm like, I haven't heard anything about Biomutant, and have never seen like really people like talk about it at all. Like,
Yeah, because it was first unveiled. I think it must have been like a good year or year and a half to 2 years ago.
yeah,
Like
I
they
remember
kind
that.
of
I remember
they started
seeing.
showing it off, and then it was radio silent after that. There was nothing,
Sometimes that's a
and
good
now
thing. Sometimes that's a good thing when when a studio goes silent and doesn't say anything because they don't have anything to say. Other times it's just like it just disappears, but nobody's talking about it. That's the weird thing. Like when you have people talking about it and stuff, that's usually a good sign. When it's not and like nobody says anything, it's usually like okay, like this is awkward.
yeah, I'm curious to see kind of how the hype will build around this, and if it even will coming into as we get closer to the end of May, because like I think it looks super interesting and super kind of a little bit different than a lot of what's going on around it. But I'm waiting to see if they stick the landing because, like you said, sometimes that silence is great, and sometimes that silence is not a good indicator of what's coming. But I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it.
Same,
Uh,
honestly.
the last one that's coming out in May, which one that I'm very, very curious about, is World's End Club, which was just recently shown off at the
Yeah,
new Nintendo
that just
Direct.
got announced recently.
Yeah, and like for me, I'm a huge Danganronpa fan, so anything coming from that studio, like I'm curious to check out. But like from what I saw of it, the gameplay, I don't totally understand what it is
I don't
because
think it's
like
supposed to be honest with you. That's like Danganronpa. Like, how do you really explain someone's like Danganronpa gameplay just on visuals alone when you just look at it? It's like you got to sit down and play it to really kind of like understand and get it.
yeah, because especially with this one, they seem to have added some like platforming action like sequences to the game, and like I can't figure out whether is it a visual novel, is it an action game with visual novel esque cutscenes? Like it's kind of seems like this in between.
Yeah.
But I'm very very curious about it.
Agreed. Like, you know what I notice amongst games like that or games that look similar, like with that anime style and stuff coming out of Japan, they're all starting to get like these third person, like, moving sections, like action sections, whether it's platforming or just like combat and stuff. We saw that with the World Ends with You sequel that's coming out at one point. Like we saw that
Right.
with Persona 5, was it Strikers, obviously with the way it looks as a Muso
Yes.
game. Like, and now
Yep.
this one a little bit. And I'm pretty sure there's others I'm just forgetting. But like that's just something I've noticed within the last year that seems to be popping up.
Yeah, I wonder if they're just trying to give it a little bit more verticality. You know what I mean? Letting people move around in those sections because like I think that's kind of one of those stigma that comes around games like that where it's just what do you like the
Yeah, there's not a lot
common
of
panic can
action.
be like,
There's not a lot
yeah,
of
what
like,
do you like, you're just reading the whole time, and you know what I mean? So I think
yeah,
they're trying to add in a little bit more to it. I'm curious to see how it's going to work for them. That's because I love Danganronpa, so I'm curious
yeah,
to see more from World's End Club. And that brings us to June, and this is kind
pretty
of where
awesome. I'll tell you right
June
now.
is like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is something that I'm
Ninja
incredibly
Gaiden
excited.
collection. That's a big one for some people. Like, and it's on Switch.
Are you a big Ninja Gaiden guy?
Oh hell yeah, I'm a big Ninja Gaiden guy. Like I haven't played Ninja Gaiden in a hot minute, but like I remember when Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden Black and Ninja Gaiden Sigma came out, like all these different games. Like those were the games that were hard before Dark Souls was hard. Like that's
Yeah, yeah.
it is so like that's a game like a lot of people I know now these days have not played, and when they play, they're gonna be like, oh, like they're gonna get a nice rude awakening, like in the same way that Dark Souls gave everybody a rude awakening. But like those games are still pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I remember renting, I think it was Ninja Gaiden Black
Yeah,
back like, Black from like,
on
Blockbuster back in the
Xbox,
day. And
original Xbox, I think.
yeah, OG Xbox. And I remember taking it home and popping it in and I started playing it. And I probably would have been like, I don't know, maybe like 14 or 15 at the time. And I started playing it. I was like, oh my God. I just kept getting my ass beat in over and over and over again. And it's just like,
Hard.
yeah. So it's like now I'm kind of like, do I want to do that again? I'm
And
curious.
I think this is a telegraph that we might get another new Ninja Gaiden at some point. Like, there's just certain collections, like when you see or certain remasters that you're like, yo, they're thinking about this. And one of the ones that made me think about that was Onimusha, because if you remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Capcom move that happened, they're cooking something up over there. Especially when Onimusha, the original game, got remastered, a while back.
yeah. I'm curious to see what else we're gonna get, and I think you're right. I think a new Ninja Gaiden, especially with like with these new consoles, and those games were always kind of known for being graphical powerhouses. Like they were known
Yeah,
for being
visual eye candy.
beautiful. Yeah, I'm curious to see if we'll get one. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank is something that I'm really excited
That's
about,
the
and
biggest
the
one.
other one,
I honestly.
yeah, it's just like I think that's going to be one of those. A lot of people are waiting for that to be kind of like quote unquote one of the first
That's the
true
reason why you
next
bought a
gen
PS5 right
games.
now. That's the game that,
Yes,
like, for a lot of people that if it was earlier in the year, like again, that got delayed, I think like once or twice. That was the game why the first game that people were expecting to play on their PS5 for the first time. Honestly,
yeah, and I think that I really think that was just a victim of Corona. Like, I really do
Yeah,
think that this game was
exactly.
slated supposed to come out much earlier than then. Because when they announced June, I was like, oh, okay, like I'm fine with that, but I was expecting it earlier.
Mhm.
And like that seems to kind of be like the common consensus. But I think it's going to be super great. I love that series, and especially the last couple have been like a
Ratchet and
really
Clank is
great return to
awesome.
form.
Yeah.
And Mario Golf Super Rush
This is a
is
new
the
one.
other one.
It's just got shown
Yeah,
during the direct, like, and the thing is, we haven't had a new Mario Golf in a hot minute, so, like, it's expected, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm cool with it." Yeah, and it looks like it's gonna
I'm
do more. Like, it's gonna do a lot more
yeah,
casual stuff.
the that kind of new like speed golf mode looks really interesting where you're like chasing after your ball against other
Yeah,
players to try and be like the first one to
that's the
kind of
casual
sink it
mode.
in. Yeah, I think it looks fun. I'm curious to see more just because I played the latest Mario Tennis game and I wasn't a huge fan.
Mhm.
I thought like it kind of dropped the ball a little bit. It just didn't feel as tight as it should have, and some of the mechanics that they threw in just didn't work as well as I think they wanted it to. I
Yeah.
think golf is a little bit harder to mess up. You know what I mean? I think if you kind of have your core mechanics in, like as long as the courses are good, I think golf is kind of a bit of an easier sell. But
Mm.
I'm curious. I'm really curious about this one. And the other one that's in June is Back for Blood, which is that Left for Dead
Yeah, that one was
spiritual successor.
surprising. That was a surprising reveal. Like, I mean, there's like a bunch of other stuff behind the scenes of why it's called that and like all like how that came to be and stuff, but it looks interesting, I will say.
Yeah, I was a big Left 4 Dead guy back in the day, so I'm curious to see more, and especially now, like being able to play it online much more easily than you could have back then.
Mhm.
I'm curious. I'm curious, and that kind of brings us to the end of what we have announced with a
Confirmed, yeah.
game.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
like we have
weird. Well,
Skyward
there's
Sword.
others that are confirmed. Like, I'm looking at the schedule on like a Wikipedia, like No More Heroes 3, which is one I'm looking forward to. That's not until like August. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
like a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, the Skyward Sword HD also got
Skyward Sword HD.
why.
Yep.
Like, we're gonna be here for a hot minute.
What? How do you? What are your feelings on that one? I've never played Skyward Sword.
Okay, I've only gotten to dabble with Skyward Sword. I haven't sat down to fully play it through because even during the Wii era and stuff, I was playing other games at the time.
Hmm.
But like, I think it's cool that we got that as an HD. Like, a lot of people were the conversation about this like was weird because a lot of people were a little disappointed because we didn't get new details about Breath of the Wild 2, which is understandable. But I think there's a reason for that because Nintendo has nothing to say and they're still working on it. Because of Corona and everything else that has been happening. But I think
Hmm.
also a lot of people wanted to see some of the other games get remastered or get re-released on Switch, like including Wind Waker. Twilight Princess was one that I saw passed around a lot, but I
Yep.
think that this is for a reason. I think that Nintendo's also going to do something for the Zelda 35th anniversary at some point. I know people keep saying that or whatnot, but I feel like that maybe they had like plans for it and everything just got like thrown a monkey wrench into it because of all the stuff that's been going on. And then keep in mind, they have to deal with other games like Breath of the Wild 2 that they're still developing that they announced way too early, in my opinion, like Metro
I
Prime
agree.
4. Like that's the big one that everybody's been waiting on for a while, besides Breath of the Wild 2. So I think that this is cool. This is a good thing to tide us over until they finally have something to say. I don't think that as far as releasing Breath of the Wild 2, but as far as talking about Breath of the Wild 2.
I just feel like and it seems that there were some insiders and stuff with inside information, quote unquote, saying that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are still on the way this year. I really do feel like they had plans to do this kind of Mario 35th style
Yeah.
collection, and I don't know. The cynic in me says, you know what? Let's just split them up and charge $60 for each of them. Release them, a little bit apart.
I
Um,
don't think they're charging $60 for this one, right? I don't think it's full
they
price.
are, yeah,
They
dude.
are really?
It's already
Okay,
up for
well,
pre-order.
that
Yeah.
is Nintendo. I mean, hey.
That's Nintendo's gonna Nintendo more so than anybody else.
True.
Yeah, it's already up for 60, which I think is brutal. I think that talking about Kingdom Hearts, I think like the amount of granted they're
You know
doing a
what
little
that
bit
is,
with it. We
though?
don't.
You know why that is because Nintendo does that to maintain the integrity of their brand, and it's on Nintendo platform. So I can understand that you're getting the Nintendo quality. It's like paying for an Apple product or paying for the Apple name, really,
Yeah,
besides
yeah,
the
yeah.
word. But with that compared to the Kingdom Hearts thing, at least with the Kingdom Hearts thing, there are alternatives. There's no alternatives to get a Zelda game anywhere else. Like, that's just the way it is.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that, and whatever people were saying, I think they were right too, because I think it makes sense. And Nintendo's not a stupid company, like either to put these together, kind of like what they did with the Mario anniversary, where they had all three Mario games in one bundle, and then have it for a limited time. Which, by the way, still a stupid idea in my personal opinion,
Yep.
but it is what it is.
Yep.
But I think we're going to get that with Zelda, and I keep saying that I think the ideal Zelda collection, or one that would be good, would be to do like what they do with either Mario or Kirby, and put all the 2D Zelda games in one bundle along with some of the other classics like that, and then have the big 3D Zelda bundle, which would be Wind Waker, which would be Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess together in one bundle.
I think it would be such an easy sell. I think you're 100% right with the handheld. I think if they kind of bundled that all together and kind of dropped a lot of the handhelds together in one
Because
bundle.
how awesome would it be to get a bundle or at least a huge collection, kind of like what we got with either the Kirby collection or the Mario collection, or even what we got with the Mega Man Legacy collection, where we had all
Yep.
the original Zelda games from NES and SNES. Then you got the Oracle games on GBA,
Yep.
I mean Game Boy Color. Then you got the Minish Cap from GBA, like that,
Yep.
and you skip over Four Swords and Triforce Heroes and all this other stuff because you stick with the core Zelda like games, that the
Yeah.
ones
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
are ones like that, and you have that as a collection, and
And
have that on the eShop. That'd be awesome. That'd be
And
amazing.
I think the cynic in me says too, like I could totally see them doing that because I think that's a really easy sell for them. I think that thing would sell like crazy. And I would not be surprised for them to do that and then turn around and piecemeal out the 3Ds.
Oh yeah, of
Like,
course.
release Ocarina at full price, release Majora's at full price. But, at least they could say, okay, but look, all the 2D ones are together in a bundle over there. And I think it would be like an easier pill for people to swallow. Because I don't see them bundling the 3D stuff together. I think they got a taste with that Mario collection, and I think they knew what they were doing. I don't know if they're going
Make
to
it available
bundle the
for a
Zelda.
limited time, like doing that, like give people some options, but make it like some urgency to it. I feel like like
Exactly.
because people will do it regardless. I mean, even if they complain about it, like it's a known fact, okay, that people will
Yeah,
complain about Nintendo, but they will still buy Nintendo regardless. That's just
and
how.
that's exactly. So that's kind of it for like the big stuff that we know about. Like there's other stuff that's coming this year, and I want to touch on that a little bit because
Mm.
do you think like because we're talking about Zelda now, so let's stay in Nintendo. Do you think that rumored Switch Pro, Super Switch, whatever you want to call it, do you think it's real, and do you think it's coming
I
this
think
year?
that there's been rumblings of it that have some merit, but that's the thing with a lot of this stuff. You can't believe anything out there until Nintendo comes out and says something, or they put something out
Exactly.
themselves. And that's how it always is. Like we've been hearing about this Switch Pro stuff for like 2 years now. Like to be honest
Yep.
with you, I think for
Yeah.
a while, and it makes sense because it is known. It's a traditional thing with Nintendo that they iterate on their hardware, and it takes a little bit of time for them to put stuff out. And I think that some of the more obvious iterations with this whatever new version is going to be about Switch is to deal with the Joy-Con drift and deal with the battery life. That's the two biggest things, and then also make it so that way games can run a little bit smoother with the guts inside of it, whatever processor.
Yeah.
And the
Because I
problem is that everything else going on around us, between Corona, between all the other stuff with the environment of the games industry, I think has really delayed that. Possibly, I don't think we get a Switch Pro this year. I don't think we even get it next year. To be honest with you, if I'm being realistic about it,
really.
I think we start to hear about it maybe next year, like an official capacity. But I don't think
Mhm.
we get it, like actually see something released.
See, I agree with you. I do think it's real, and I think that like the Switch is now what, like 5 years old ish now,
About 3, 4 years. I
4 years.
think it's 4 years old. I don't know at this point. Or
4 years, and I feel like it's starting to struggle a bit under its own weight. Like I was playing Bowser's Fury handheld just a few days ago, and it was already stuttering a little bit. So like
Mm.
I feel like even with their first party stuff now being brought over, like I think the Switch is
Some
starting to
people said
show its
that about
age a
Age of
little bit.
Calamity. Said the same thing.
Yeah, so like I feel like they are due for an upgrade. So I kind of feel like, especially this year, I think you're 100% right with Corona. I think delaying things out and them kind of struggling to kind of put things together a little bit just to have stuff for people to play this year. I see them coming back swinging next year, assuming that the rest of this year plays out okay. And I wouldn't be surprised if, for the 5-year anniversary next year, if you kind of get that Switch Pro, if you get that Breath of the Wild 2, if you get that Galaxy 2, I think
Like a
next
big
year could be
blowout games. Like
I
again,
think I
there's some big ones coming down the line. Again, Metroid Prime 4. We know that's in
yep.
the film, and we know that it got delayed because they went back to the drawing board because they admitted it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one thing I give Nintendo a lot of credit for, and they did the same thing with Breath of the Wild 2 now for this direct. They're like, hey, listen, just want to come out, let you know, like we're doing this stuff. We have to wait a little longer. We're sorry,
Yeah.
but we're doing stuff. Like, and I appreciate that from them. They're the one of the few companies, if not the only company now, that does that in such a very front facing way. And you don't see that from a lot of other companies. But
Yeah.
that just shows us, like, again, there's still stuff in the pipeline. Like there's still stuff that's being worked on that we're going to get eventually. And I think that having those games, especially a big game like a Metroid Prime 4 or having like Breath of the Wild 2, okay, guess what? We have these games here, and we got a brand new version of the Switch that you could buy on, and you can play these games at the optimal way to do so. Like there you
And
go.
I
Like it almost writes itself.
Yeah, I think it's such an easy sell being like, remember 5 years ago with Breath of the Wild and the Switch, March late, let's do that again. Switch
Please.
Pro, Breath of the Wild 2. Like
Imagine that.
it's such an easy way to do it. So I'm curious. I'm very curious to see. And I loved Bowser's Fury, so I'm excited about whatever they're doing next with Mario for his his 3D full blown
And then
game. I wonder if
2022
it will.
also Splatoon 3. That's another one
Yeah,
that we just talked about. Like,
yeah. Splatoon 3 is going to be big. And I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to buy into that game, especially with the look. And now a lot of Switches being out there. I think that game is going to be massive.
hmm.
I think a lot of people kind of not sell it short because I think that game gets a lot of love, but I think people underestimate it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
hands
and I
down.
think it's going to be huge. The other big one that so let's kind of stray from Nintendo a little bit, but I want to know what your thoughts are on Halo Infinite. Do you still think that's coming this year?
No,
And
I don't think so. I don't
no,
think it's coming this year. To be honest with you, like
I hope
I know
not.
they delayed it. I know they said that they pushed it back and stuff. And you know, I think that they're very ambitious. I think it's cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. If I had an Xbox Series X, that's the game why you bought the console. Like it's Halo.
Yep.
Like that
Hmm.
that's just how that is. But again, with everything else that's been going on, and I think also with the reaction that they got from that first reveal, that gameplay and stuff that's
Yes.
shown, I think that really kind of caught them off guard a little bit because a lot of people that I saw that were big Halo fans were not saying this game looked good. Like they were complaining that the game looked like bad. Like, and I don't think it looked bad like garbage, but I think like they were expecting a lot better.
I think that especially after a lot of what Sony's done with PlayStation in the last few years with things like God of War, with
Mhm.
things like Horizon, right? Like you're seeing a lot of these kind of next steps. And the biggest problem that I had with that Halo demo, and I agree, I don't think it looked like garbage. I just don't think it looked like anything
It
special.
wasn't
I thought
next
it just kind
gen
of
for
looked,
some people. It didn't look like what
yeah,
next gen should be, like how they're bigging it up.
yeah, and like I kind of thought like they were going to do a little more in terms of like bringing Halo into this, especially after the misfires that were 4 and 5. I know like the hype around those games for both are is pretty divisive. So I thought they were going to come out swinging after everything that happened with the Xbox One and Halo Infinite. I think you're right. I think they were a little bit caught off guard with people's reaction to it, and I would love for that game to be massive because I think Microsoft's done a lot of good and I think they deserve to kind of, start winning a little bit again. And I think Halo Infinite could be that game. So I agree with you. I hope it's not this year because I just want that game to come out and just lay waste to everything around it because
Yeah, give
I
it time.
think,
Give it
yeah,
time,
I
honestly.
think, what about God of War Ragnarok?
Same
Because
thing. Same
that's,
thing. Give that team the time they need to cook that game because that I just recently played through God of War again. Because I was writing stuff that for different content stuff, and like they give them time. That game, we know that team is like going to do quality stuff, and it's weird to say that now because I think CD Projekt Red has like really mucked up that like perception of the game
yeah.
and stuff, and it's very you have to be very suspect now of like all companies because of stuff like that. Because remember, everybody thought that CD Projekt Red could do no wrong, and look what
Well,
happened.
they were the golden child for the last number of years after
Yeah,
The Witcher
same
3,
with
right? They were
Switch.
like,
Like, that was they had CD Project Red. Like you
yeah,
question them at one point as far as the level of quality and their integrity and stuff. And I feel like now that with stuff like that happening, you do have to be a little bit kind of like cautious with all companies. But I still feel like Sony Santa Monica. I feel like the people at Naughty Dog, like they still have a pedigree to them and a reputation is like okay they're going to do great work as long as you give them the time to actually make stuff happen. Some people can argue for like The Last of Us Part 2, with the way that game turned out and stuff, but I still feel like it's still like a high level of quality. Like again, we're going to get the same thing from like God of War, the sequel, Ragnarok, so just give
I
it.
I agree. I think the biggest thing with The Last of Us 2, I don't think that was I think people were divisive on it because of what the game was. I don't think that was for like a lack of what the game was trying to do. I think that was very much what they wanted the game to be. I think CD Projekt would just, with everything going on with Cyberpunk,
Yeah,
a lot of money people got involved in situations where the devs were trying to make their game. I don't think PlayStation handles that the same way as much. You know what I mean? Like I think they're much more measured with their
I
approach.
think now after
Uh,
that, I think that with some of the other
Even
studios,
more so.
Sony's a little bit more mindful to stuff like that. And also keep in mind, Sony Santa Monica is first party to Sony, so I think they're on top of the
Exactly.
ball with that. I feel.
Yeah, especially after everything that was because God of War Reboot, right? How beloved that game is
I
in this
do. I
industry now.
remember being there when they first showed it at E3, like in the press conference, like just sitting there and just like following that stuff, and then following it over the years. Like that game is awesome, and everything leading up to it was just done so correct. It was so cool.
I agree. I agree. And I think that's kind of it for a lot of the big stuff. We still have Horizon coming this year as
Okay,
well.
that's another one,
Um,
Horizon Forbidden West. And I
yeah.
just finished Horizon yesterday. I just finished through it for a second time.
That game is one that I need to go and play. It's one of those things. I started it alongside the original like Breath of the Wild when it came out, and Breath of the Wild sucked me in so much that like I was having like a huge disconnect between playing both of them at the same time.
Mhm.
I need to go back and to give that game some proper love.
I
Because
will say, like, if you go back now, because you played Ghost of Tsushima, right?
yep,
Okay, if you like Ghost of Tsushima a lot, or if you like games like God of War a lot, you might not like Horizon Zero Dawn as much going back to it now, because there's just certain things about it that other games that came afterwards, like Ghost of Tsushima, that it just does better like that. And
yeah,
Horizon is a little bit like there was some updates to it that they have a lot of content. They have a huge map, which is awesome. But like there's just certain things like with the climax of that game, I don't think that holds up as well compared to others that had a little bit more time to like make more of like a big umph towards the end of the game.
yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious because like a lot of people are very, very excited about Forbidden West, rightfully so. The game, I mean, from the little bit we've seen, looks beautiful. Uh, oh my gosh, a game I completely forgot to mention coming in March is Kenna Bridge of Spirits. That's one of my most anticipated games. That game looks so
They had a
cool.
trailer. That was a good one. That was a good impression.
Yeah, looks beautiful. All right, well, that's kind of a lot of the big stuff. There's obviously plenty that we missed,
Yeah, there's a
but what I
lot.
want to know before we kind of head for closing, what is a game that you would love to come this year? One that has not been announced, but like you think that could happen.
Oh
Like
man,
give me like what is something that you would love to see this year
that
that
has
we don't
not
know
been
about
announced.
yet?
And the thing is that I'm basing this off the leak, the big Capcom leak that happened. That they that
Right.
like I don't. Again, we were not supposed to know this stuff, but now we know like what's over the horizon technically, and that's the Power Stone remake. Because I feel like Power Stone is a series we have not seen in a very long time for many different reasons, and it's good to know that Capcom for a hot minute has been thinking about and talking about remaking that. They're doing the same thing with Final Fight, which I think is awesome. I think that
Hmm.
now they're doing this, that you could see that with like Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which is like they're kind of like pseudo rebooting some of these franchises, but giving new entries to like their big catalog of games, which is awesome. And I feel like Power Stone is one that everybody talks about, thinks fondly of it back on the Dreamcast, but also even in the arcade and on the PSP. Remember, there was a Power Stone collection on the PSP that a
Oh,
lot of
there
people
was.
really remember. And it was just the first two games. That's all it was. It was just ported over to it. And I would love to see a brand new modern take on Power Stone. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think it'd be really cool. And it's just something different that we would see from Capcom that's not Street Fighter or not Resident Evil. And it's just something that's part of their backlog we haven't seen in a while. I think that'd be kind of cool. So if it obviously, I don't know if it's going to come out this year because again,
Mhm.
it seems like there isn't a lot of stuff done with it yet. But at least we know that they're thinking about it. They're talking about it.
I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna actually stay in Capcom for my pick. I am absolutely like pipe dream for me, and there does seem to be a little bit of scuttlebutt. There does seem to be some assets that were being thrown around and stuff. I really want a Mega Man Battle Network collection to come
Hmm.
to Switch. I
Yeah.
would those I have so much love for those
If we could
games,
get
and
Zero Collection, we could get Battle Network. Like I feel like they they,
right,
they would put it out because Capcom is one of those companies that feels like, yo, we can make money on it. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. And,
exactly,
like they just release all these collections. So you realize how many times they release Super Turbo with like different collections. Like I'm talking about like
yeah,
Capcom
right,
collections. And sold it off the name of Super Turbo, like just to get it like that. Like
yep.
they're not stupid. They know what they're doing, but like I feel like Capcom is the one that would still like give Mega Man some love. And I still think we're gonna get a new Mega Man at some point. I feel like
I
Legends 3 and other stuff for that franchise, I still think they're still thinking about.
I agree, and like I think a Battle
Yeah.
Network collection would be such an easy way to do it too. Because I think outside of like I'm thinking like even how they did the Final Fantasy VII ports, where they have the optional like fast forward mode. Because I think
Yeah.
I went back to a couple of those games a few years ago, and like the biggest thing that stuck out to me was how slow the movement can be, and just that's just like traversal, not even within fights. But I think like the battle chip system, there's so much that those games did right that I don't think they don't need to do very much to it to make it feel modern esque. I think
Yeah.
outside of just like boosting the movement speed and doing a couple small tweaks, just quality of life stuff, I think those games would be great, and I would love to have them back because I
I
have
could totally
all of
see
my
them
Game Boy
doing it.
cartridges,
Honestly, I could
and like
totally see them doing it because they just, again, look at how many collections we got for Mega Man as it is, and again, they're good collections. Like the Mega Man Legacy Collection, Mega Man X Collection 1 and 2, the
yep.
Zero Collection, I think is the one that's best put together as far as what is it? Just like all the extras and like just the way that game is presented and stuff. It's really dope, really cool, and you can apply that same thing to any of their other franchises. Again, we were just talking about Breath of Fire before. Why isn't there a Breath of Fire collection? Like again, Power Stone was, like you said, Battle Network. Like there's a lot that I feel like they could work with. That'll be really cool.
Yeah, and they have like such a wealth of games that they could pull from, and like to toss those together, and especially just
Final
drop them
Fight,
for
that's another one.
for,
I just thought because they're remaking Final Fight. Like I feel like we could get a Final Fight collection, even though some of those
and
games are bad, but still, like just have them.
and that's the thing, right? Like you don't have to drop them at full price. Sell that thing for 30 or 40 bucks, and like it doesn't. I would assume it's not a massive
Like
development overhaul.
that's what they did with the Mega Man X collections. Like the exact same thing. It just writes itself.
Exactly. Just do it, Capcom. Just give me Battle Network back, please. I just want to play those games again. This is so much to ask. But yes, that is our hype check for 2021. I'm sure we will revisit this as the year goes on and we get more and more announcements and more leaks. I hope, JJ, that you get Power Stone. I hope
That'd be sweet.
I hope I get Battle Network. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I've had a blast talking to you and like just being able to, bounce off each other and talk about the amazing games that we have coming and our love for them. It's been a wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. Again, it was fun. It was chill. It was a pleasure. And again, I just love, like I said, I love conversations like this. This is what I'm all about. And I just think it's dope. And hopefully everybody listening to this enjoys it as well.
I hope so. Can you plug your stuff for us one more time to remind everybody where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me in a ton of different places. First, you could follow me on Twitter at Jakejames Lugo, and you could also follow me on Instagram at Jakejames Lugo as well. But subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/gamerswithgains channel, or just search Jake James Lugo in the search bar. I'm trying to break far with my YouTube channel. I'm trying to really kind of grow it. My goal is to get past 10K subscribers. I've still got a long way to go. I'm only at like 2,400 almost now at this point, but still show it some love. There's new reviews, new content every single week, highly edited, highly produced reviews, let's plays, previews, all types of stuff. That there's a lot of content in there that I know you're going to love. It's no matter what type of fan of a genre or types of games that you're a fan of. Like there's a lot of things there that you should definitely check it out. So yeah, show me some love. Come say hi.
Please do. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes so that you guys can click over there easily. I don't want to hear no complaining that you couldn't find shit. Everything's going to be in the notes. Just click over, throw some subs down. It'll be nice and simple because Mr. JJ makes fantastic content and deserves all the love in the world. So please go do that. And that brings us to the end of the show, everyone. If you want to hear more from us, check us out over on YouTube at Burnout Brighter. We are also trying to grow. We're trying to get to that 100 subscriber mark so we can get that sweet custom URL. Please throw us some love. You can find us at Facebook at the Burnout Brighter Podcast, and over on Twitter, I'm at Burnout_Matt. And that is where you can find all of our stuff. And of course, over at anchor.fm/burnoutbrighter. So, JJ, one more time, thank you. It's been a blast. I hope you'll come and join us again. It's been wonderful talking to you.
That'd be dope.
I hope you have a great day. Everybody, keep it locked. We have more stuff coming very soon. We're going to get amped up on YouTube very quickly. So please continue to watch and continue to support. We will catch you guys next week. Peace out. Okay, let's rock.